I watched that on Friday night, and I was really curious about you, Lyon and Buckley speaking about it as the former players, because I had my view of it, and I was listening to you three talk about it, and I thought, gee, that's.
Well, I think you can only comment on what you see, and what we saw on Friday night is there were multiple occasions that, and we've all been there. It's not as if I'm not talking from experience. Multiple occasions when it is so hard, and Jack. Anyone that's played in a grand final and won a grand final, and Collingwood is probably heightened because of their supporter base and everything like that. Once you've played in a final series, you go away and have a pre-season. The biggest challenge for teams that have been through that is to find motivation for the start of the season. That is real, and that is the hardest thing you can possibly find. Now, if this was the last game of the season, we know it's not. Do you think those efforts would have been increased? Clearly. So for sides who are wanting to go back-to-back, sides who are wanting to become, teams that have been speaking about for years and years, you have to be better in the early part of the season. That is just what I've learnt over the years and being a part of it.
So we're happy to separate the two incidents, are we? We're not lumping the high five in with the defensive running, are we? Because
no, that was
one of the great trivial things of all time, that high five, to make issue out of that. I'm looking at that going, surely we're not pointing fingers.
Well, I think
the defensive running, yeah, I'll cop that, but the high five,
Well, that's why 7 players were highlighted.
Well, but what we've zoomed.
Well, just adds to the story. So
you've focused on the high five.
Why they need to do it?
Why not?
Why?
They won a premiership off those sort of behaviours.
In round 2, round 1.
No, but I just think that's what being a teammate's
for me,
about.
just
encouragement. It's like.
They weren't engaged in the game. That's the way that I read it.
That's what you said. And Gary Lyon and Bucks, I think by memory, were in agreement.
Yeah, that's my opinion. And
just as long as we're separating the defensive running from the high five, because
it's all in the one basket.
Oh, no.
So to the stuff of substance tomorrow night. How big is tomorrow night in your mind?
Well, it's huge. I think. No side wants to start 0-3. Whether you are the reigning premiers or the side at the bottom, every player is human. Every player will go through certain thoughts, and don't believe for a minute if a player says we are only looking at this week. When you're 0-2, you start to try and calculate when you can get back to an even keel, and then to see if you get in front of the ledger. So that plays on your mind. So there's so many things now that players mentally have to deal with because they're 0-2. And
other than just playing the game.
Other than playing the game, right. You're looking for moments early on in the game that give you that jolt of confidence. That's what you do as a player. If that's not happening, then all these other thoughts that have been coming in throughout the week when you've had some downtime, then they start to appear. So it's a great challenge. Absolutely, it's a great challenge.
Yeah, they're in the firing line for the demon of expectation this week. We spoke about them last week, but clearly you're right. And I would even say when you've lost a couple in a row, you're not just looking back to get back to parity. You're going, where's that next win? Like whether that's the first quarter or whether that's the first contest as you're talking, it can be a really slippery slope, especially when you're used to winning. You start to go, well, mate, they start questioning things that you did over summer. Did I do it the right way, or are we going about it the right way? We start to focus on who you don't have in your team at the moment. You might have injuries. It really is a big game for Collingwood.
So when you look at it, you've seen them play. What's the number one or number two thing? What's the main thing that you are not seeing?
I just don't think they've got the ferocity around the ball at the moment that they had last year, and it's interesting that it is so hard to go back to back, and Louis and I have been lucky enough to do that. Louis gone back to back that you go from being the hunter, and Collingwood were the hunter. They came from 13th, made the finals, then won the premiership. Is that now they're the hunters? So when you're looking at what you want to copy as an opposition club, of course you're going to look at the best team in the competition and go, what have they got, or what are they doing that we're not? So at the moment, by just out of the fact that sides are studying them, they're figuring them out. And there's a few things that haven't happened. I mean, Lockie Schultz has come in and we thought he'd have a big impact, and he just probably hasn't fitted into a system yet. And I've got no doubt that he'll fit in somewhere down the line. Jamie Elliott's not playing as good a football. What sort of holes Dan McStay left? So there's a few questions there. But this will be the sign of a good side. Can they can they arrest the momentum at the moment and get it back going the way that they know they can do it?
When Richmond fell over the cliff, a lot of people went after you and Cochin too old, too slow. Look at them. It started with Pendlebury and Sidebottom. How do you think that they would handle that? How did you handle that?
I think internally your club needs to support you, so they don't need to come out and be loud and proud about it. But internally, that McRae, I reckon, and the coaching staff would be having conversations about them. But they would know if they hadn't played up to the standard. And I don't know whether Collingwood have had many wins in terms of individual performances this year. So there's probably a lot of blokes in there. What I do think's happening is when you play a system, every player's a cog. So to work nicely, your cog rolls through as it would in a clock or whatever. That if a couple of cogs get out of sync, how much can that affect down the line? It actually has a pretty far reach. So at the moment, there's cogs that aren't working or cogs that aren't there. And guys that are used to playing, knowing what's going to happen because it's predictable, don't have that predictability at the moment. So
With no ferocity, no, the lack of ferocity.
They've certainly, it has affected them.
Yeah, I think that's on your point. Probably the question that they may be asking themselves is, have they got enough flexibility through the middle of the ground? I think is
like Sydney exposed them in that area.
Yeah, and that's another thing you can put on the table. Sydney and the Giants have great depth.
Yeah, in the middle.
Rock hard fit, great depth. So can they, when the time comes, do they have the flexibility to go with these teams when they're rolling 8, 9 midfielders through?